Okay, this is a drive mechanism, tape drive mechanism out of a TASCAM Porta II. Pretty much your typical cassette drive mechanism. Nothing particularly special about it, although it's very well made, given when. Kind of heavy. Fundamental difference with this is the heads. As I said, it's a 4-track recorder. It uses regular cassettes, which these have 4 tracks. Stereo, meaning 2 tracks for one side, you flip it over, 2 tracks for the other side. This stack allows you to record on all 4 tracks at the same time, or record on 3 while you're listening to one, or you can mix it up any way you want with this device. Hopefully I'll have enough time to include the picture of the whole thing once it's done, but I've had this thing for years. It's probably made, oh gosh, I think in late 80s, thereabouts. I could find out for sure, but just looking at the way the thing is made and how, call it late 80s. Went to use the thing. It had been working the last time I used it, which was about a year ago, and I should have checked it out first. I know better, but I went ahead and popped the tape in, this very one, and you know, was giving it a check out, running it through some of the functions, and it ran into a little bit of a problem. Now, you can put the tape in here normally and pop it right back out. Right now, you hit play. Notice the heads are not engaged. Even though this button's down, the heads and the pinch roller are not into the cassette. That's because the motor does that. So I'm going to flip him around. It's a little easier to see, at least for me. You can see it pulls the heads in, engages the pinch roller. Now, of course, I'm spinning the motor manually. It's not connected to anything. And, yeah, seems to work just fine. You hit stop. Heads retract, pinch roller retracts. You can go ahead and pull the tape out. Well, that didn't happen. Now, it wasn't like this, so there was not much I could do about it. So, given the age of the thing, normally what gives out on these beasts are the belts. They're the weakest link by far in any of these things. I've repaired these things over, gosh, many years, but normally the mechanism, you know, the motors give up sometimes and the heads wear out, but primarily what gives up the ghost on these things are the belts. There's one there for this counter, and I think 3 more down, yeah, 3 more belts down here. Belts of this thing are great. Nothing to complain about with them at all. Even the counter belt, as thin as it is golden. So it's not a problem with the belts. It does not have a lot of mileage on it. I've owned it for most of its time. I did get it used, but it was kept in very good condition, as I've done as well. So, what the heck's going on with it? Why was the tape stuck in there? Oh, and by the way, once it got stuck, nothing worked. Fast forward, rewind, nothing. Nothing else worked. And the problem was, you can't get the housing open with the tape in it. It's just the way the housing is made. Let me pop the tape in here. There's a lip that comes over this part of the tape, right along here. And so you can't pop this up and kind of work it out with the heads and the pinch roller engaged. I mean, you keep in mind these things go all the way into the tape, and you can see that you can't just pop this up. And I tried, being very careful, of course. I tried, nudging this back, nothing doing it, would not move. What I ended up, and I was lucky in 2 places. Number one, I had a tape in it that has screws, so you can take the tape apart. Number 2 was, I had it in there and with the screws facing up where I could get to them. So that's what I did. I ended up taking screws out, taking tape apart, removing the reels and, you know, setting all that aside. I was able to get the tape out. Then I was able to, now this is the tape, so it was, you know, went back together just fine. Some tapes they don't have screws, they're glued together, and that would have been a real pita to get that out. I would have got it out, but as it is, it worked out pretty good. I was able to get this tape out, salvage it. Once I got that out, getting this out was pretty much a piece of cake. Bunch of screws take the cabinet apart. 4 screws hold this in, a few connectors. Nothing mysterious about that. So what's wrong with this beast? Well, a couple of things right off. But the only thing really wrong with this is that, well, it needs a cleaning, which is easily seen here. There's some dirt, dust, grime stuff in there. It sticks to the oil and lubricants. But the lubricants are the problem, and they tend to use a silicone-based lubricants in these things. But even there, they creep all over everything, and dust sticks to it and clogs stuff up. And so you know, you got to mind that, especially if you leave it sitting uncovered. But the problem is that the grease in this thing has got gummy. I hear people say dried up. Not so much. It's got gummy. It's the volatile components have evaporated away, leaving behind the baser, thicker, tarry gunk. Now, I said 2 things are wrong with this. You probably could use lubrication throughout, but there are 2 trouble spots right now. One is this head plate, that which engages the heads and the pinch roller to the cap stand inside the cassette. This is sluggish right now, and that relates to the problem it was having, why it wouldn't allow the heads to draw back. Once I got it out, I got it unstuck, but now, even now, it's sticky. That should snap back when I let go what I'm pushing on here. The plate underneath of this right here, is associated with the brake and the auto shut-off mechanism, and that really shouldn't be moving the way it is when I push on the head plate. What's going on there is there's some grease between this brake plate and this top plate, which is the heads and pinch roller plate. The grease between the two is gummy, and it's sticky, and so this plate, when moved, is drawing this plate when it shouldn't, and this plate is putting a braking action or a damping action. In fact, it was just stuck on this top plate, so it wouldn't allow this to draw back. Now, there's some clearance in here between these 2 plates and this base. If I push down on this brake plate and get it unstuck from the heads plate, now the heads plate moves freely, and when you do it, it doesn't so much move the brake plate. So that's problem number 1. So easy to fix. Basically, that just means I got to get up in here. Probably can do it without taking this whole plate off. I don't want to do that. Alignment issues. I think I can get in there, but just remove this clip, this spring, lift him up a little bit, get in there, clean it out, and re-grease it. Still debating what I'll use. I think for this Molykote molybdenum grease, probably be a good choice. So that's one thing. That's why the tape got stuck in there, and that's very easily remedied. The other problem, otherwise this now works, although the sluggishness. Fast forward does not work at all. Push that, nothing, other than you hear the motor struggling. The take-up reel does not turn. That turns out to be a gear. It's maybe a little tough to see down in here, which engages the take-up reel only during fast forward. So that somehow, and I've not seen exactly, but somehow that gear down in here is a little nylon, white nylon gear, transfers power from a pinion gear up here somewhere or a smaller gear, to gear on this take-up spindle. And that's the problem. Apparently the lubrication that's used between this gear and its spindle axle has got gummy. And when I first tried to spin this gear, it was very, very stiff. And I've worked it a little bit, and sure enough, it's loosened up some. The thing is, that needs to come out. It needs to be cleaned of the old grease and relubricated with something, not oil. I use silicone lubricants, mixed results. I tend to like the Molykote, also Aero Grease, which is a lithium soap, what they call it, Lubriplate, also works well, although that has its own issues. It can dry out. So the question is, you see this gear is buried way down inside. Got to get to that. Hell, what than the other side? Okay, maybe there's a way. Well, often is the case with stuff that's meant to be serviced, and I think this is. There's evidence. There are a number of screws in here that are red. That's an indication to the service person, in that case us, that's where you need to get. 99 times, if it's something you can't see, or a common thing that needs to be looked at, that's the place you want to go. There's 100 other screws in here, and they're all the same, but then these red ones. So that's a clue. That's telling you that's what you need to get. Okay, so given that, I see some things that would kind of get in the way of that. The belts, well, they'd have to come off, obviously. There's a screw over here underneath of this solenoid. That the only way to get to that is for the solenoid to not be there. And even if you could get to all the screws, I suspect there's another screw up under here that you can't see because of the flywheel. This here. So, and not only that, this plastic piece that we need to remove extends under the flywheel. And chances are, very, very good chances are, this black piece needs to pull straight out. You're not going to be able to finagle it out. God knows what's attached to it. That would be a nightmare. So, flywheel needs to come out. The only way to do that is to remove the flywheel bracket. That pops off. The flywheel will come right out. On the capstan shaft, that's the shaft for the flywheel, there's a little plastic washer. You need to mind that. It's basically just a dust and dirt cover to keep dust and tape debris from getting down into the bearing, which is this piece here. So that's fairly straightforward. Looks like 3 screws. You pull the bracket, pull the flywheel out, and that gets you access over here. And there, like I said, there's probably another screw you can't see. Get to that. Of course, the belts come off. 2 screws holding the solenoid in. And if you just take that off, you can get to the screw underneath it. But I see a part of the solenoid bracket. It also extends over this black piece that we need to get at. So that's also 2 screws. So just make it simple. Just take 2 screws, remove the whole bracket and solenoid, get all that out of the way. Doesn't look like we need to unhook any wires or anything to do that. It looks like there's enough slack in here. There's a cable clamp that can be loosed, and this can just fold back. This is no problem. Then we can get to this black piece, take those screws out, and see if we can get them out. Now, as in the case here, this one's easy to see. That it looks like it's going to not be a problem with this whole assembly coming out. But there may be springs attaching to pieces that are mounted to this black piece, and something up top here. I'm a little suspicious. I see a spring down in here that could be a little problem if this, whatever it's attached to, doesn't come with it, and the other end of the spring is attached to something that is mounted to this piece. So could be a little tricky. I'm going to bore you with the undoing of the screws as much, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to pull the flywheel, I'm going to pull this bracket, pull those apart, and see what we got. Okay, so we've got the flywheel off in its bracket. I'll also loose the solenoid. It's still sitting here with all the wires, but there's enough slack in the wires where it's possible to get to all 4 screws. Turns out there was no hidden screw under the flywheel, but of course that had to come off anyway. Pretty easy to get apart. 5 screws altogether. So now we can get access to these red screws to take this off. Looking at this, the gear we're after that needs to come out and be cleaned and lubricated is this one here, this guy right here. When I first looked at this, I thought, okay, this cam's going to have to come out, and to get the cam out, this cam follower is going to have to come out, and there's springs, and before you know it, you got the whole damn thing apart. And but if you push on the fast forward button a little bit, he moves to engage, and therefore can clear this guy, so I don't have to mess with none of that, so that's not a problem. The only thing I see besides this black piece, it's plastic, is this armature here. Cam follower looks like for this cam of some sort. There may be a way to get this to clear this, because I need to pull this up this way, and this arm is in the way. Maybe I ought to move him out of the way once I get this off, but this clearly needs to come off to even get to this. A little hard to tell what retains this in there. I hope it's not one of those split plastic rings. I suspect it is. I hate those things. Often you can get them off just fine, but if you don't lose it, getting it back on right, you deform it at all and they won't work. So that might have to be replaced. I mentioned earlier springs and things that may be attached to this. I see this one, and fortunately this end of it this is just a hook rather than a hole, so I don't have to untwist and bend the spring to get it disconnected from this. In other words, this spring connects this black plate with this armature, and I don't want to have to take this out. So that spring needs to be disconnected. This one here, over here, this is part of this black assembly or piece, and this whole bit here is going to come out with it, looks like. So I don't think he needs to be cut loose. I've already detorqued these screws. They're ready to back out. I did notice that while all 4 of these screws are red, this one appears to be a different. It may just be because these are hidden, a different size or length or something. So gotta be careful of that. Just make a note of where they go. I always put parts in the bag so I know where they went. You get old, you forget. These are reusable. That's whiteboard marker, so when I'm done with this project, wipe it off and reuse these bags. I usually pre-label them so I don't have to mess with that while I'm pulling screws and pulling stuff apart. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and loosen these 4 screws. There's a little bit of magnetic. Okay, looks like these screws are all the same. Same length, same size, not a worry. Okay. And him. Okay, I'm going to get this spring off. For that I'm going to use a little tweezer. It's a little stiff. Okay. he's loosed. Oops. Okay. We'll save him. This will go in a bag. All the parts that need to go back with the black plate. Screws, springs, and label bag. Okay. Now, looks like we're able to get this guy up here and pry a little bit on it, see if anything complains. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, something's hung up. Or not. Let's take a look. Ah, beauty. Okay, so with just this one assembly, there's a whole crap load of function in here, and maybe while I've got it open, I can inspect and see if there's anything else that needs lube. Probably not with this. Everything feels really good, just where it should be. This tire feels pretty good. Looks like it grips the spindle, real spindle, pretty good. So I don't think there's much to see here. Nothing to see here. Clutch. That's working just fine. So I don't think there's any much to do here, but I'll have a look at it now. So yeah, this is the beast we got to get to. See, there, he's engaged with nothing, and it's tough to turn it, and it was just stalling the motor, or at least making the belt slip. And I see some green gunk about here, lubricant remnants of it. It does look like this is one of those plastic split rings, daggone it. But I'll probably be able to get him off. I don't know about clearing this yet. I may be able to rotate this around and get him out of the way. We'll see, because this gear shaft extends up a little high. It's not like I can get it up and then kind of finagle it out of there. It doesn't look like that's happening. Another option, I'm thinking there's a larger split ring here, these plastic boys right here, that holds this armature in place. Maybe the better option would be to pull that. I'm going to have to take some time off camera here and look it over a little closer and see what the best way is. But other things in here look pretty good. These all spin very freely. The grease is still nice and slippery. I don't know what. Maybe they use something different on this guy for some reason. I'm not sure what I'm going to use on it yet. It probably Molykote. But otherwise, you know, everything slips and slides around pretty good. So I think we're golden. Just get him fixed up, put it back together, fix the grease on this plate here. Between these two, you pay a little attention to what's going on underneath here with it. It's kind of sluggish, so he may have to come out and be re-greased. But that's about it. See what happens. All right. I had to resort to the microscope here and some extra light, but was able to get. It's not a split ring. It's like those. That just there's a barb on this shaft that captures it. I was able to pick it off without breaking it too much. There's some pretty dried up stuff here. I think what's going on is this brass shaft has corroded and left. I mean, the lubricant is green colored. Nowhere else is there anything green colored. It's all this sort of a tan, brownish stuff, what you'd expect. For some reason, this here is green. I think it's because of the copper in this brass shaft. Somehow, the moisture, whatever, got in there. Something happened. Nevertheless, this gear is just barely able to turn on that shaft. In fact, the retaining bit was kind of glued to the top of the gear, so all of that nasty has to be cleaned off of there. Getting this gear out, turns out, as I pointed out earlier, if you push in the fast forward button, this armature moves down. Let's see if I can do this without moving things too much. So that clears this cam, but not this. However, this can move completely out of the way of all of it. So now I can get this gear off of here without having to take anything else off. Simple matter of kind of work it up the shaft, pull it out, clean it up real good, put it back with some proper lube, and take it from there. Okay, so they're all fixed up. Cleaned off the old lube, put on new, cleaned up some other stuff in there, some gunk, dust. Seems to be working okay, at least when manually operated. Stick a tape in without any levers pressed. Turn the motor by hand. Of course, there's nothing. Hit play, turn the motor, see the heads engage, the pinch roller, and it's transporting the tape. It's hard to see, it's kind of slow. Hit pause. It should stop the transport and pull the heads and pinch roller just a little bit back, which it did. Tape has stopped. Release the pause and it immediately re-engages. It's good. Hit stop. Everything snaps back open as it should. Rewind. That engages. And the one we were having big problems with, fast forward, that does engage as well. So it looks like the thing's working just fine. Put her back in the box and see how it works. Okay, got her all back together again. Seems to be working just fine. Plug in some headphones. Don't have an amplifier in this room right now. Turn her on. Tape, my test tape sticks. I don't like sticks so much, so if this gets ruined, who cares? Okay. Various functions. Fast forward. Not working. Rewind. Again working. And play. And it's playing. And that's, I don't know if you could hear that, it's through my headphones. And fast forward works also while it's in play mode, so you can just hit fast forward and it will skip through. At the same time, you can kind of hear what's there so you can cue it. It's kind of cool. As soon as you'll release fast forward, right back to play. Probably not the best policy for preserving tapes, but for goofing around it works just fine. And pause, just as it should be. And this pause, boy, it's pretty on cue. When you push it down past the ratchet, and as soon as you release it, it goes bang. Again, probably not the best policy for tape wear and tear, but who cares? They're a dime a dozen. Well, they used to be anyway. So there it is. A little bit of mechanical problems. Lubricants dried out, or if not dried out, just crept away from where they needed to be. A little bit of corrosion maybe. Some cleaning, a bit of Molykote. I did have to dress one of the belts a little bit. It was slipping, the one that has to do with rewind, fast forward. I mean, it would have worked, but I had it open anyway. Address that belt. The other ones didn't need to be touched. If you can help it, don't dress them. Buy you some time is all. I'm sure I'm going to have to replace that belt, if not all of them. And I've seen kits for these. I'll probably just go ahead and get one. It's real easy to replace the belts on them. So there it is. It's all working. Good as new. Hope this helps anybody that may have one of these beasts and has had some mechanical problems with the transport. Otherwise, they're pretty solid. I've opened some of these up and had to replace the front end op amps. Somebody plugged a speaker output in one of the inputs and zorched it. But other than that, they're pretty good. Pots get a little scratchy, especially these sliders. Dust gets in there. Usually just working them clears that out temporarily anyway. I tend to avoid spraying any kind of cleaners or anything in there. Those solids can do damage to all kind of things, including, most especially, the belts. The pots work just fine, but then the vapors from those solvents can mess up anything else. So if you're gonna clean the pots, you gotta disassemble the whole thing, get it away, get the board away from anything to do with this transport before you do that. But she's working. Near as I can tell, everything's right. I won't know it for sure until I record, but I don't expect to have any issues with that. That would be electrical. So, cool. Hope this helps. See it.